Donald Trump just tried to outmaneuver Kamala Harris and Tim Walz by having JD Vance speak at the same event that Tim Walz spoke just one day after, but in the process of trying to outmaneuver Democrats, Trump inadvertently set a trap for JD Vance. And the best part is that Fox News is quick on the draw. They wasted no time and called out JD Vance and Donald Trump less than an hour after JD Vance's disastrous appearance in Boston, where he was nearly booed off stage by the International Association of Firefighters. And I do want to point out, Tim Walz spoke to the same exact union yesterday, just about 24 hours ago, and it's safe to say that he was so cool that he primed them for JD Vance's performance, where JD Vance absolutely flopped. Even Fox News wrote an article titled JD Vance Booed during Firefighters Union speech, in which he asked members, what have Democrats, quote, gotten you? And of course, Fox News puts their own spin on this and makes it seem like JD Vance owned the firefighters, but in reality, it was pretty embarrassing. I'm surprised Fox News covered this at all, but they could be trying to light a fire under the ass of the Trump campaign, like, hey, how come every time you guys go outside, you ruin the campaign? Vance tells Firefighters Union they have been let down after endorsing Biden in 2019 election, but I think the firefighters beg to differ. Let's see how Fox News covers this, and let's break down the Republican MAGA reaction. Republican vice presidential nominee JD Vance was booed Thursday by some members of a firefighter union. That's an understatement. They say by some members of a firefighter union, by all of the members of the largest firefighters union. That's what it should say. Firefighters Union in Boston, while delivering a speech in which he asked members, quote, after supporting Democrats for so long in this union, what has it gotten you? Well, they've gotten stronger workers' rights, workers' protections. Democrats want to raise the minimum wage. I mean, when it comes to Republicans fighting for the working class, I just don't see it. The boos were heard immediately after Vance took the stage at the International Association of Firefighters convention, leading him to say, quote, sounds like we got some fans and some haters, but I didn't hear any fans in that clip, which we'll play in a second because it's so beautiful. But this is Fox News. This is FoxNews.com writing that JD Vance was immediately booed after taking the stage. Quote, that's okay. Listen to what I have to say here and I'll make my pitch. Vance continued. That's honestly maybe the most mature thing he said in the past 5 years. He said, it's okay if you guys hate me, I'll make my pitch. But he was again met with jeering later in the speech when he declared former President Trump and himself the most pro-worker Republican ticket in history. Again, I want to show you guys these clips in a second, but the fact that Fox News is detailing this is just so beautiful. Vance, who spoke a day after Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, addressed the exact same convention as Tim Walz, asked the union to question their past support of Democrats, and it didn't go well for him. In 2019, this union endorsed a Democrat for president with high hopes, the Ohio Republican said, but sadly, I believe you've been let down. Can I just point out that every single time Donald Trump and JD Vance leave their houses, leave their basements, and appear in the public, they end up offending somebody. JD Vance can't go 5 minutes without ragging on childless people. Donald Trump can't talk about Jewish Americans without calling them crazy. Neither of them can talk about VP Harris without bringing up her race or her sex. And JD Vance loves to attack military veterans. Now, apparently, my broader point here is that Donald Trump and JD Vance cannot stop attacking people. Several crowd members booed Ohio Senator JD Vance after he took the podium to deliver remarks to the IAFF. As Vance arrived at the podium, audible boos were immediately heard. Vance acknowledged that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz spoke yesterday, quote, I respect this union for inviting both sides to take the stage and make a case for our membership. And I do want to say this would be respectable. I think it's very respectable for unions to want to hear out both sides. We should continue doing that, but I wish the other side was more of like a Mitt Romney Republican and not a MAGA Republican. But the fact that the union invited both parties is respectable. The audience applauded Vance's comments about taking both sides. On Wednesday, Walz's IAFF speech highlighted the Democratic Party's strong ties to organized labor. Unions have been a cornerstone of the Democratic support for a long time and a cornerstone of the Democratic Party. But the GOP is increasingly courting labor groups. I don't know why there is this misconception among apolitical Americans that the Republican Party is the party of workers. The Republican Party is the party of the working class, when that couldn't be farther from the truth. Teamsters President Sean O'Brien Ryan spoke at the RNC in July, while United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain addressed a Democratic National Convention last week, so they are split, these big unions. Walz emphasized the role of unions in building the middle class and, along with Vice President Kamala Harris, committed to protecting firefighters' benefits, compensation, and safety. This clip is beautiful. Take a look at the full thing.
President Trump and I are proud to be the most pro-worker Republican ticket in history, and I want to talk about why we're fighting for working people, why we're going to fight for unions and non-union alike.
Those boos you hear in the background, if you can't hear the boos, let me turn it up and play it again.
Fight for unions and non-union alike.
Those boos are coming from people who were listening when Tim Walz was explaining the threat of Project 2025 and fully understand that Donald Trump and JD Vance will get into office and strip rights away from millions of working class citizens, millions of lower class citizens, basically anybody who's not their rich buddy, any normal citizen, people like you, people like me, who are not millionaires, not billionaires. Donald Trump and the Republican Party want to screw us. They still subscribe to this trickle-down economic theory where they think that if they provide tax cuts to the most rich people, if they give money and subsidies to the richest of the richest, then it will somehow trickle down to you and I, but that is not how it works at all. Vance's communications team has since declined to comment about this event on the record. On the other hand, the Trump War Room campaign account posted videos of the crowd applauding certain agenda items, including abolishing vaccine mandates. So, the Trump War Room had their own spin. I'm sure some MAGA people in the crowd were like, yeah, F vaccines, we hate vaccines, and apparently the MAGA War Room thinks that all of the union workers are on the Republican side, which could not be farther from the truth. Now back to Fox News. JD Vance asked firefighters to remember the wave of anti-police protests that swept through America in the summer of 2020, saying that, quote, we sure as hell will not bail out the criminals like Kamala Harris did. Number one, Kamala Harris did not bail out the criminals. Number two, they have tried to say repeatedly that Tim Walz, sweet Tim Walz, let the rioters, let the protesters burned the city down when Donald Trump was caught on tape praising Tim Walz. The criminals, many of whom were going after our firefighters as they tried to keep our city safe and put out the fires. We're going to put criminals behind bars where they belong. Let me tell you, if you don't like criminals, JD Vance, you're really not going to like your own running mate, Donald Trump. If we're going to be putting criminals behind bars, then why isn't Donald Trump, why hasn't he been arrested? Republicans will say that Democrats escalate rhetoric whenever VP Harris says that criminals should be locked up, and she's referring to Donald Trump, but JD Vance is saying the same thing right here. And the idea that the prosecutor is not going to lock criminals up, but the criminal will lock criminals up when his entire cabinet is full of criminals, that is rich. Finally, JD Vance said, quote, we're going to defend your right to free speech, including your right to speak out about the unconstitutional COVID vaccine mandates imposed by the current administration. I want to point out the obvious. When they say we're going to defend your right to free speech, does that include Donald Trump wanting to jail anybody who burns the American flag? That is one of our fundamental rights. That is part of the First Amendment. JD Vance said, we're going to abolish every single mandate and we're going to fight to rehire every firefighter who is wrongly terminated. He's talking about vaccines, and he's really just going for the low-hanging fruit right there. I'm surprised he didn't start talking about trans issues, as if firefighters care about any of these social war issues that Republicans care so much about. Either way, all that I ask is that you leave a like, comment a blue heart, hit that subscribe button so you can help grow this beautiful community heading into this election. Thank you and have a great day.